This is one of those moments where the market looks weak on the surface, but underneath, something much bigger might be forming. Bitcoin is sitting at a critical support zone, and whilst doing so is flashing a bullish RSI crossover on its monthly time frame. Now, historically, whenever this signal appears, it doesn't lead to small bounces. It leads to major Bitcoin expansion. At the same time, price is still struggling below key daily supply. So this means we're at a decision point. Is the base being built before a move back to 100K, or are we about to see one final shakeout before any real fun begins? Today we're not guessing. We're breaking down exactly what needs to happen next. This is Bitcoin on Point, where I break down the market exactly as it is and how I'm positioning around it. In this video, we're going to break down why the monthly RSI crossover matters more than most people realize, the key Bitcoin level that must be reclaimed for any real momentum, what the weekly order block for Bitcoin is telling us, and how I'm also managing the live Ethereum trade step by step. If this helps you stay calm whilst the market is uncertain, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe. Let's dive in. Now, before we look into the structure, let's analyze today's bullish crypto developments. And onto our first headline. Bhutan's government just moved 100 Bitcoin, and that's valued at around $6.7 million in the last 24 hours. Now, we need to understand something here. Bhutan is one of the very few governments that has been actively mining Bitcoin and building a treasury. So when sovereign entities move coins, it only tells us one thing. Governments aren't ignoring Bitcoin anymore. They're just actively managing their exposure. Now, moving on, President Trump just announced plans to pass the crypto market structure bill very soon. I mean, I've seen some sources suggest as early as March the 1st. However, let's just see. Either way, it's a massive announcement, right? This isn't just about price. This is about regulatory clarity. And markets tend to front-run regulatory clarity before it officially arrives. And then we have this little chestnut to dig into as well. Coinbase's CEO has just stated that the US government could eventually own over $1 trillion in Bitcoin reserves. Let that sink in. If even partially some of this narrative becomes reality, we're not talking about retail cycles anymore. We're talking about sovereign accumulation. So whilst the price is consolidating back at key support, fear is being priced in and is still present in the market, all whilst big players are positioning. So when governments talk, when regulation shifts, and when supply keeps getting absorbed, this is where structure and macro are starting to align. And when that happens, the next move usually isn't small. Now, with that in mind, we're going to dive into the structure itself. And on the monthly time frame for Bitcoin, several major bullish factors are aligning. First, as discussed yesterday, we have the RSI bullish crossover. This isn't a small signal, guys. Historically, this has preceded major upside expansions for Bitcoin. Secondly, we have the $64,000 level. And this is a key structural level. It's got strong history and has always had, or is given us, today, the potential for strong reaction. On top of that, we have the cup and handle structure forming on the higher time frame as well. And lastly, the red trend line break. Now, if a major trend line breaks, price does often rally back up into it to retest it, right? And that's where it's relatively important here. If price does retest and hold above it, then a breakout is likely confirmed and there's a strong probability of continuation back to 100K. However, price could also fall back down to major support, right? And it's going to sound crazy, but we're looking at 28K for a second. And technically, yes, it's a possibility. However, based on the current structure and bullish confluences, the probability is extremely low, right? If I had to put my finger on it, I would say maybe under 5% or so. So for now, the higher time frame remains bullish. Now, with that in mind, let's look on the weekly time frame, right? And on the weekly, we can see that price broke down from 90K. It initially broke the trend line and slipped back down into the weekly bullish order block, the block that we've been discussing for the last few videos. So far, that order block is actually being respected, right? And that's the most important thing. So from here, we have two scenarios. First off, price could rally upwards, reclaim structure above 80 to 90K and push to 100K, right? Which is aligning with the monthly view. Or scenario two is where price breaks down deeper and potentially revisits at minimum 50 to 40K before a potential reversal. So there are two major scenarios, but as of now, the order block reaction that we're seeing is still valid, right? Now, before we go any further into the daily time frame, all my trades are tracked transparently on Profits Precision. That's every entry, exit, every adjustment, and all my updates happen live in my free Telegram. So YouTube is where the breakdowns occur, but Telegram is where my executions happen in real time. All the links are in the description. Now, let's dive into the daily. And this is where things get a little bit more tricky, because even though Bitcoin has reacted from the weekly bullish order block we just discussed, it's actually not sustaining much strength right here. So price keeps failing to close above 70K, right? And that's where Bitcoin and the market originally broke down from. So 70K, that region now becomes a supply/resistance zone, right? So as long as we're below it on the daily, momentum is rather limited, right? Bullish momentum. So if we look at it as a collective, the higher time frame is still bullish, right? Back at weekly order blocks and stuff. But the daily still needs confirmation. So that reveals the tension in the market right now. So with Bitcoin wrapped up, let's talk about Ethereum on the daily time frame, because for ETH, this is where the real tension lies. Ethereum is sitting inside a major weekly support zone. And that sits at around $1,800, right? It's not a random level. It's a higher time frame demand zone from the past. But there is a problem. Even though price is inside this support, it's not showing any aggressive bullish strength, similar to Bitcoin, right? So instead of actually breaking structure to the upside, it's still printing controlled lower highs. And that tells us that buyers might be present, but they're not necessarily dominant yet, right? So similar to Bitcoin, we have two scenarios. Scenario one is where ETH reclaims structure, pushing up towards the bearish order block, which sits at around $2,200. And then we decide whether that level flips into support or actually rejects. And scenario two is where ETH fails to build momentum, loses the weekly support, and rotates towards $1,800 to $1,700, right? If it stoops below 18, you're looking at 1,700. So right now, the daily structure is, I would say, neutral to slightly bearish for ETH. So we don't blindly assume strength here, right? We necessarily are waiting for confirmation. Support zones don't guarantee the reversal, even though we're sitting in them, but they do create opportunity. So with that in mind, let's look into the 2 hour, speaking of opportunity, because this is where our trade execution matters. And we already have a position that is active. Our entry at $2,042 with 0.5 risk was deployed. Entry 2 at $1,959 was also deployed with 0.5% risk. So our total exposure is roughly 1%. And now on the trade, here's what I'm actually watching for. The plan is simple and controlled. If price shows strength above 2.2 to 2.3K, I may scale out or exit the trade early, right? Because that level, as we discussed, is still a bearish order block. So if we do get that rally back up to 2.2K, I may scale out. But if Ethereum again drifts lower here and breaks weekly support cleanly, we just simply have to accept the loss. This isn't emotional trading, right? It's structured risk management. And that's the advantage of splitting our entries, right? It gives us the flexibility with risk. So instead of full exposure at once, we've built the position in layers, is what I'm trying to say. So whatever adjustment I do make will be updated live inside the Telegram. Execution, as always, matters more than the prediction itself. So with that in mind, here's a quick trading challenge update. We have currently completed 4 trades. We have 4 wins. Even though ETH isn't going so well, right? We have a 100% win rate. And the account is up 6 to 7%. Every single trade is tracked on Profits Precision for full transparency. All executions are done on week's exchange. Nothing is hindsight, and everything is posted live inside my Telegram. So for a summary on the video, monthly structure remains bullish. Weekly demand is holding by a thread. Daily is still under supply pressure. Ethereum, weak short-term structure, but sitting at support. So this is a transition zone in the market. Higher time frames are preparing, but lower time frames are still fighting. And this is exactly, where disciplined traders are actually going to gain an edge. So if you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe if you want more structured analysis instead of emotional noise. All the links are in the description. Let's see how it plays out. All of the best.